Friday, Donald Trump told reporters that Iran was finished. The Navy is gone. The Air Force is gone. Air defense is flattened. That was the message. Total collapse. Complete dominance. The war, by that telling, was already decided. But just 72 hours later, on Monday morning, Trump changed course and asked for 5 days of peace. He said it followed productive conversations. Iran answered immediately. There had been no dialogue with the United States, so now the contradiction is impossible to ignore. The man who said he was obliterating Iran is now asking for a pause, and the country absorbing the bombs is the one saying no. Think about what it takes to make that happen, because something changed between Friday and Monday, something serious enough to turn certainty into hesitation and escalation into a request for time. This is a military that spends close to $1 trillion a year. It fields 13,000 aircraft, 11 nuclear carriers, and the most advanced weapon systems ever assembled by any nation. On the other side is a country that has been under sanctions for decades, with a defense budget that does not come close to 2% of what America spends. No stealth bombers, no fifth-generation fighters, no carriers, and yet that country pushed both American carrier strike groups more than 1,000 kilometers backward. Amid retaliation attacks, Iran tracked and struck an F-35, the first time in history that jet has taken enemy fire. It ripped out America's radar and missile defense infrastructure across 7 countries, billions of dollars worth. It shut down the Strait of Hormuz and triggered what the IEA is now calling the worst energy disruption since the 1970s. And after 3.5 weeks of relentless bombing, after 1,400 dead and 18,000 wounded, after losing its supreme leader on day one, Iran is still firing at Israel, at American bases, at Diego Garcia 4,000 kilometers from its own border, still refusing every offer to talk. Something went wrong with Trump's plan. We need to talk about why he is suddenly desperate to pause the war on Iran. And I will show you exactly why the next 5 days matter more than the previous 24. Donald Trump is trapped. He cannot escalate without triggering a global economic catastrophe. He cannot withdraw without admitting the campaign failed, and he cannot stay on the current course because the losses are compounding faster than the victories. Look at what happened in just the last 4 days. On Friday evening, he posted on Truth Social that America was considering winding down operations. By Saturday, he reversed himself and issued a 48-hour ultimatum threatening to destroy Iran's power plants if the Strait was not reopened. By Sunday night, he was reportedly dispatching envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for back-channel talks. That deadline expired Monday morning. He did not strike. Instead, he announced a 5-day pause. The Iranian parliament speaker, the very man identified as Trump's alleged negotiating partner, denied any talks had occurred and called it an American attempt to escape the quagmire. 1 hour, Trump declares total victory. Next, he threatens annihilation. The hour after that, he offers a ceasefire. Then he claims negotiations that the other side says never happened. He called NATO allies cowards for not helping open the Strait, then asked those same allies for assistance. He told reporters he would never put boots on the ground, then added, "If I were, I certainly would not tell you." That is not a strategy. That is a man looking for an exit he cannot find. Every defense ministry on earth is watching this. Every country that operates American weapons or hosts American bases is recalculating. But first, we need to understand how Iran broke the machine. On March 19th, a U.S. Air Force F-35A Lightning II made an emergency landing at a regional base after flying a combat mission over Iran. The pilot had shrapnel wounds. CENTCOM confirmed the landing but would not specify the cause. That same day, Iran's Revolutionary Guard released footage showing what it described as a direct hit on the aircraft. 2 sources with knowledge of the situation later confirmed to American media that the jet had been struck by an Iranian munition. If true, this would become the first publicly confirmed case of an F-35 taking enemy fire in combat. The entire $1 trillion program rests on one promise: stealth. The aircraft's geometry and radar-absorbent coating are designed to make it nearly invisible to conventional radar. Iran did not bother with radar. Iran used passive infrared tracking, systems that detect the heat signature off the engine rather than electromagnetic reflections off the airframe. The specific system reportedly used is known as the Majid, a domestically modified infrared-guided missile platform. The F-35 was flying deep inside Iranian airspace on a penetration strike mission. That profile tells you CENTCOM believed Iranian air defenses were already neutralized. That assessment was wrong. No photograph of this damaged jet has been released. The pilot survived, but the actual condition of a $100 million stealth fighter remains unconfirmed. Japan operates F-35s. South Korea, Australia, Singapore, the United Kingdom, half of NATO, they all fly this aircraft or have orders pending. If a sanctioned country with a fraction of America's budget can track and strike this jet using infrared sensors, the entire pricing model and strategic justification for the platform changes overnight. The thermal signature data the IRGC now holds from that engagement is worth more to Chinese and Russian counter-stealth programs than a decade of espionage. And the F-35 was not the only thing falling. By March 17th, more than a dozen MQ-9 Reaper drones had been confirmed destroyed during Operation Epic Fury. Some were shot down by Iranian air defenses. Others were hit on the ground by incoming missiles. Each Reaper cost between $13 and $16 million. At confirmed numbers, that is over $200 million in drone losses alone. The Air Force stopped ordering new Reapers back in 2020 because planners already knew they were too slow and too visible against any competent air defense network. They were counter-terrorism tools designed to loiter over Afghanistan and strike targets that could not shoot back. Sending them into Iranian airspace was a doctrinal mismatch, and Iran exploited it using the same passive infrared approach that hit the F-35. Then there are the 3 F-15E Strike Eagles. On day 2, March 1st, all 3 were downed over Kuwait in what CENTCOM said was a friendly fire incident caused by Kuwaiti air defenses. All 6 crew members ejected safely. 3 advanced American fighters lost in a single friendly fire event. That does not happen in modern warfare, not with the identification systems these jets carry. No detailed explanation has been provided. The incident remains under investigation. Each F-15E is worth roughly $87 million. That is $261 million gone before the war was even 48 hours old. Add the KC-135 that crashed in western Iraq on March 12th, killing all 6 aboard, in an incident the U.S. military said was not the result of hostile fire or friendly fire. That brings the confirmed toll to 13 American service members dead and roughly 200 wounded. But those aircraft losses, as staggering as they are not the reason Trump offered a 5-day pause. The real reason is what Iran did to America's eyes, and that story is worse. On the opening day of the war, February 28th, Iranian forces struck the AN-FPS-132 Block 5 early warning radar near Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. Satellite imagery confirmed the hit. Debris from one of the radar's 3 phased array faces was scattered across the building's roof. This is not a portable unit. The AN-FPS-132 is a massive fixed installation, a UHF phased array system that tracks ballistic missiles at ranges exceeding 5,000 kilometers. It provides 360-degree early warning coverage for every layered defense system in the region. Qatar purchased it in 2013 for $1.1 billion. It is the only one deployed anywhere outside the continental United States. Pentagon sources estimate it would take 5 to 8 years to replace. Iran targeted it first because destroying it was a force multiplier for every missile strike that followed. Once this radar went dark, every intercept became harder. Every warning window shrank. Iran knew exactly what that would do. Most people think THAAD is untouchable. In reality, THAAD is only as good as its radar. The ANTPY-2 is the sole sensor of the system. Without it, the battery is just a launcher with no eyes. Only 16 of these radars exist on Earth. Each cost between $250 million and $1 billion. Satellite imagery confirms Iranian strikes damaged or destroyed AN-TPY-2 radars at Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, where photos show a blackened site with 13-foot craters flanking 5 destroyed trailers, at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, where a radar shelter was charred, at Al Ruwais in the UAE, where strike markings cover THAAD battery structures, and at Al Sadr, also in the UAE, where 4 buildings took hits in the first 72 hours. The Jordan radar was reportedly destroyed by Iranian drones costing between $20,000 and $60,000 each. A $60,000 weapon destroyed a system worth up to $1 billion. That cost ratio tells you everything about this conflict. Total confirmed radar losses amount to roughly $2.7 billion. Total U.S. equipment losses in the first 14 days are estimated near $4 billion. To plug the gaps, the Pentagon started pulling THAAD and Patriot systems out of South Korea and redeploying them to the Gulf. That weakens deterrence against North Korea, just to patch a region where the shield is already shredded. During the 12-day war last June, the U.S. fired over 150 THAAD interceptors, 25% of its entire global stockpile. Each cost $15.5 million. The current conflict is burning through them even faster. Iran's missiles cost a fraction of what it takes to stop them, and Iran can manufacture replacements faster than Lockheed Martin can. Then there is the Navy. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive warship ever built at $13 billion, caught fire in its laundry room on March 12th. It took over 30 hours to put out. 600 sailors lost their beds. 200 were treated for smoke inhalation. The ship had already been at sea nearly 10 months straight, redeployed from the Venezuela operation to the Middle East with no break. Its 650 toilets kept breaking down. Morale had collapsed. The Navy is now investigating whether the fire was deliberately set by crew members trying to end their deployment. The Ford sailed to Crete for repairs on March 18th. It is out of the fight. Meanwhile, satellite imagery showed the USS Abraham Lincoln had pulled back to roughly 100 kilometers from the Iranian coast, up from about 350. The U.S. called it a controlled reallocation. The operational meaning is a retreat. Both carrier strike groups were pushed beyond the engagement range of Iranian coastal weapons. China watched that. Russia watched that. And then there is the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's most devastating weapon because it costs almost nothing to deploy. Since roughly March 4th, Iran has enforced an effective closure using radio warnings, attacks on merchant vessels, and the collapse of commercial shipping insurance. 20% of global oil flows through that waterway, around 20 million barrels a day. When Iran shut it down, the impact was immediate and global. Brent crude crossed $100 by March 8th and later hit session highs around 119. Gulf oil production dropped by at least 10 million barrels a day by mid-March, the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. The IEA released 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, unprecedented. Major carriers suspended Middle East routes. Over 150 ships sat anchored outside the Strait waiting. At least 21 confirmed Iranian attacks hit commercial shipping. Fertilizer prices surged from $475 to $680 per metric ton, directly threatening the American Midwest planting season. Goldman Sachs raised the probability of a U.S. recession this year to 25%. India's Prime Minister Modi compared the crisis to COVID and began repatriating over 220,000 Indian nationals from the Gulf. The IEA chief said on March 23rd that 40 energy facilities across 9 countries had been severely damaged and called the crisis worse than the 1973 and 1979 oil shocks combined. Trump gave Iran a 48-hour ultimatum on Saturday. Reopen the Strait or your power plants get destroyed. Iran's parliament speaker responded that if power plants were hit, critical energy infrastructure across the entire Gulf would be irreversibly destroyed. Iran's Defense Council warned that any strike on Iranian coasts or islands would trigger mine-laying across Gulf shipping lanes. Iran named Saudi, Emirati, Bahraini, Kuwaiti, and Qatari energy and water systems as retaliatory targets. That was the calculation on Trump's desk Monday morning. Strike Iran's grid and watch Saudi oil terminals and Emirati desalination plants burn. Oil at $200. Global recession. Or announce a pause and call it diplomacy. He chose the pause. Most people assume the air campaign is working and ground forces are unnecessary. In reality, 5,000 Marines are already converging on the Gulf. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, 2,200 Marines from Okinawa, is aboard the USS Tripoli. The 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, 2,500 Marines from San Diego, is aboard the USS Boxer, along with 2 additional amphibious assault ships. The 82nd Airborne canceled exercises, fueling deployment speculation. Pentagon planners are reportedly considering seizing Karg Island, Iran's primary oil terminal, which handles 90% of its crude exports. Karg sits about 26 kilometers off Iran's coast and roughly 300 meters northwest of the Strait of Hormuz, within range of every remaining Iranian weapon. Ballistic missiles from inland tunnels, rocket artillery on the coast, explosive drone boats, and shore batteries. One retired rear admiral put it plainly: if we seize Karg, they turn off the spigot on the other end. A former Army officer called it somewhere between a suicide mission and a self-imposed hostage crisis. Trump originally planned to finish this war before a scheduled trip to China at the end of March. That trip is now postponed. This was supposed to be an air war. The fact that ground options are being discussed at all, 24 days in, tells you the air campaign did not deliver. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said it on CBS on March 15th. We never asked for a ceasefire, and we have never even asked for negotiation. We are ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes. He also said, we were talking with Americans when they decided to attack us, and that was for the second time. That second time reference matters. Iran was in diplomatic contact before the June 2025 strikes and again before February 28th. Both times it got bombed. From Tehran's view, American negotiations are a prelude to violence, not an alternative. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, who replaced his father after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was killed on the opening day, has not appeared in public since assuming power. In a written statement, he called the war a gross miscalculation and said Iran had delivered a dizzying blow to its enemies. Iran's losses are enormous. Over 1 T-400 dead, more than 18,000 wounded, 15 senior officials killed, civilian neighborhoods in Tehran hit directly. And still Iran is the side refusing to talk, still launching missiles at Dimona and Arad in Israel, still hitting American interests, still keeping Hormuz sealed. The IRGC's message to Gulf states hosting American forces was direct. You gave your soil to attack us, and we will not remain silent. Here is where it all connects. Iran said no to the ceasefire. Iran said no to negotiations. Iran said no to reopening the Strait. The stated American plan was 4 to 7 days of overwhelming strikes followed by capitulation. It is now day 24. The IRGC is still firing. The Strait is still shut. The radar shield covering American bases from Jordan to the UAE is functionally degraded. An F-35 was hit. More than a dozen Reapers are gone. A $13 billion carrier is docked in Greece. The other carrier sits 100 kilometers from the fight. 5,000 Marines are heading toward a ground war nobody planned for. Brent crude is near $100. The IEA is calling this the worst energy disruption in modern history, and both governments are telling their public they are winning. Both narratives contain claims that cannot be independently verified. Apply the same skepticism to CENTCOM saying its jets fly freely as you do to Iran claiming 104 drone kills. The evidence sits between those stories. And it says one thing clearly. Neither side planned for what is actually happening. Thanks a lot for watching. What do you think? Join the discussion in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. What happens after those 5 days are up? Will this war escalate further? Let me know. And please subscribe and like the video if you want to stay updated. Click the video on the screen to watch another one. I will see you soon.